So we're going to deal with Johann Sebastian Bach and his music reflects Platonic ideals, Platonic patterns, Platonic forms. So let's start to dig into this and see what in the world Bach did. To Bach, the Platonic forms weren't really distant abstractions, but they were really active blueprints for what he viewed as a very well-ordered universe. Bach viewed music as a mathematical science, specifically the science of canon. The, that allowed the composer to discover the divine truths rather than really invent melodies. Since these patterns are there permanently, we're not inventing them, we're discovering them. So Bach's well-tempered clavier is a massive exercise in Platonic idealism. The blueprint for this was to write a prelude and a fugue for all 24 major and minor keys, and Bach mapped out the form of the entire tonal universe, an incredible idea and enterprise. So we have the ideal versus the real. What did he really do versus what was his goal? So in the Platonic sense, a single key like C major is a form, it's a pattern, and every individual piece written in that key is a physical shadow of that ideal mathematical structure. Bach's mastery of the fugue, particularly in the art of the fugue, really represents the peak of musical Platonism. It's why he's revered so much today. The inherent logic is this. In a fugue, the subject, the initial melody, contains the logical code for everything that follows. Those of you that remember our discussions on Michael Levin and his ideas that there were patterns that shape biological forms, so-called morphogenetic patterns, the forms that give us, as humans, a head, a body, two arms, two legs, 10 toes, 10 fingers. This is a pattern, a morphogenetic pattern. Now, the subject acts as a pointer that dictates how the rest of the musical body must grow through inversion, retrograde, and canon. It's an incredible idea that Bach came up with here. This is discovery, not invention. Bach believed that the potential variations of a theme existed eternally in the realm of logic, in the collective unconscious of information that's everywhere in the universe. So his job as composer was to untangle the mathematical consequences already hidden within the form. In the musical offering, Bach presents Friedrich the Great with riddle canons. So here we go, the crab canon. This piece can be played forward and backward simultaneously and meets in the middle. It's a musical Mobius strip, a geometric form that exists outside of linear time. Truly incredibly inventive. The canon per tonos. This canon rises in pitch with every repetition, but somehow ends up back in the starting key, like Escher. The strange loop, as famously explored in Gödel, Escher, and Bach, mirrors the Platonic idea of the great year, an eternal cycle that returns to its origin. Remember, the great year had the four yugas, the four major cycles that made up the great year. We see ideas here in information theory due to Claude Shannon. Bach's music is the ultimate low entropy signal. Every note is logically necessary. There is zero noise. So Shannon's information theory provides the tools to measure this incredible density of meaning in a Bach fugue. Shannon's tools were what was called entropy. And the higher the entropy, the greater the things that are unknown. Uh, Shannon got this idea from John von Neumann, who told him that no one knows what entropy is, so you might as well call this entropy. Then we look at Bertrand Russell, the logician. A great English mathematician, Russell tried to reduce math to logic, but Bach turned it around and turned math into worship. He signed all his scores, Solo Deo Gloria, to God alone the glory, believing that by following mathematical laws, he was aligning his work with the eternal form of the mind of God. Incredible concepts. Bach's branching fugal structures are often compared to biological growth. And Michael Levin, the biologist, would argue that Bach was navigating the Platonic morphospace, the space of all shapes, of sounds, of patterns, of forms, finding the same optimal pattern that nature uses to build leaves or vascular systems. In Bach's crab canon from the musical offering, the music functions as a non-orientable geometric object, so it achieves a timeless state by collapsing the distinction between the beginning and the end and creating this musical Mobius strip. In the crab canon, the canon Conscrizans, consisting of a single melodic line played by two voices, but there's a twist. Voice A plays the melody from start to finish, left to right. Voice B plays the exact same melody from finish to start, right to left. So the result is that the end of the piece for one voice is the beginning for the other, because they harmonize perfectly at every point. The music possesses bilateral symmetry across the temporal axis. Incredible idea. In a standard piece, time is an arrow, moving from the past, which is the theme, to the future, which is the resolution. In the crab canon, time becomes a spatial dimension. So the geometric loop here is that if you visualize the score on a strip of paper and twist it and tape the ends together, the two voices become a single continuous path, a Mobius strip. The Platonic being here. For Plato, the material world is defined by becoming or change in time, while the realm of forms is defined by being, which is stasis or eternity. These are the algorithms that are there forever. Because the crab canon contains its own past and future, simultaneously, it functions as a mathematical object that is, all at once, rather than something that happens bit by bit. So using Shannon's information theory, we can see that the crab canon is a masterpiece of dense information, of very high new content with every note. There's no noise. Every note in the forward moving signal is a note in the backward moving signal, and then it corrects automatically. The structure is so rigid that changing a single note would create dissonance or noise in both directions. And this mirrors what Michael Levin in biology thought of as a target. The musical body is so well defined by its geometric form that it resists error. Bach's use of symmetry creates a strange loop, a concept famously analyzed in Douglas Hofstadter's Gödel Escher Bach. The visual link is the musical equivalent of an M.C. Escher drawing, where water seems to flow uphill to its own source. Now, the Platonic moral here is by creating a piece that can be played infinitely without ever reaching a stop. Bach aligns the listener with the great year to the Platonic cycle where the cosmos returns to its perfect starting point. In the canon per tonos, canon 5 from the musical offering, is a musical strange loop. It uses enharmonic modulation to trick the listener into perceiving an infinite upward spiral while physically remaining within the same octave system. Bach constructs the melody so that each iteration ends exactly one whole tone higher than it began. So if we start off at C, we end at D. When we start off at D, we end at E, and so forth. And so to achieve this, the harmony must shift upward through the scale with each repetition. In the mathematical reality of music, six whole tones would normally land the listener an octave higher. but Bach utilizes the logic of equal temperament to keep the final modulation from A sharp to B sharp as a return to C. So by the time the canon completes a full circle of six modulations, the tonic has shifted back to its original identity, creating a topological circle disguised as a linear ascent. To prevent the music from spiraling into a frequency range impossible for human ears or instruments, Bach employs octave shifts. As the voice climbs, he periodically drops the voice down an octave. So this creates a shepherd tone effect, a psychoacoustic illusion where the pitch seems to rise forever, much like the infinite staircase in an M.C. Escher print. The geometric trip is the transformation of a linear progression into a circular torus. By combining whole tone modulations with discrete octave resets, Bach creates a non-terminating algorithm where the end of the world, the octave, is seamlessly stitched back to its beginning, mirroring the Platonic concept of the eternal return. So there you have it, a short interlude on Bach and the Platonic forms.